So it's time for the New York Times headline roundup. We also look at migration trends and consumer trends in the mornings, just to keep us up to date with what is happening. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to Yumi Radio, for being here with us, for supporting us. Thank you to all the persons who have supported us since we started. We're still such a young company, but I feel like we've been so blessed. We've been so blessed. We've been able to connect with so many people in such a short time. And I just want to say thanks to you all for your support and your kindness. Every morning we have the Yumi Radio Morning Show. It starts at 6 o'clock to 9 a.m. And it's always such a pleasure to be here with you, worshiping with you, learning with you, uncovering, what's happening with you. It's been such an absolute pleasure. And so I just want to say thank you. So in the news today, the weather is for today mostly cloudy, breezy, high 42, and tonight will be partly cloudy, low 29. For tomorrow, it will be mostly sunny with a high 45. Wind in the north at 6 to 12 miles per hour, and the weather map, of course, can be seen on page A28, the New York Times, all the news that's fit to print. It's January 28, 2020. The image on the front cover is a medical mask factory in Nantong. A shortage of equipment in China has hampered the response to the outbreak of coronavirus. So you're seeing an image of persons seemingly in a factory working with these gloves. I don't know if it is that they're packaging them or medical mask factory, right? And there's a shortage. This virus has just really taken off. I remember reading about it the first time, and then the next time it was doubled, and then it's just like it's tripling the impact of it, The amount of persons dying from it is just consistently growing. It's so heartbreaking. The headline, the news story under that is feeble health system in China strains to combat deadly virus by Su Li Wei. Please bear with me this morning. I don't know what's going on. I just feel so emotional. Yes. So after suffering from a fever and breathing problems for more than 15 days, Xi Bing, a 51-year-old resident in Wuhan, China, finally sought help of a hospital. Despite the symptoms, he was not tested for the new coronavirus, a lapse suggesting that there may be far more cases of the virus than are being officially reported. Instead, Mr. Xi Bing was told that he had a viral chest infection, so he went back home. As he grew sicker, he went to 3 other hospitals, but they told him they did not have enough beds. Like many of the thousands of Chinese patients who are concerned about the new coronavirus, Mr. Xi Bing is scrambling to get help from a healthcare system straining to serve even the basic needs of patients. And here's a quote from his wife: "It is like kicking a ball from here to there." Mr. Xi Bing, who was eventually hospitalized on Sunday, about a week after his initial attempt, still hasn't been tested for the pneumonia-like virus. As it struggles to combat a coronavirus outbreak that has sickened more than 4,500 people and killed 106, the Chinese government is relying on a medical system that is overburdened and overwhelmed even in normal times, while other parts of everyday life in China have significantly improved in the past decade, the quality of healthcare has stagnated. That story continues on page A9. Another story is worry over Chinese outbreak spreads into global markets by Peter Goodman. Before a mysterious respiratory illness emerged in the center of China, spreading with lethal effect through the world's most populous nation, concerns about the health of the global economy had been easing, replacing by a measure of optimism. The United States and China had achieved a tenuous pause in a trade war that had damaged both sides. The specter of open hostilities between the United States and Iran had reverted to stalemate. Though Europe remained stagnant, Germany, the continent's largest economy, has escaped the threat of recession. Now the world is worrying anew. An outbreak originating in China and reaching beyond its borders has summoned fresh fears, sending markets into a wealth-destroying tailspin. It has provoked alarm that the world economy may be in for another shock, offsetting the benefits of the trade truce and the geopolitical easing, and providing new reason for businesses and households to hunker down. On Monday, investors dumped stocks on exchanges from Asia to Europe to North America. They entrusted their money to traditional safe havens, pushing up the value of the yen, the dollar, and the gold. They pushed down the price of oil over fears that weaker economies would spell less demand for fuel. This story continues on page A8. Bolton's account fuels Senate push to call witnesses. So one of the story under that headline is likely turning point in old rules held. In another time, in another Washington, this might be the moment that changed the trajectory of the presidency. A former national security advisor confirms that the president, despite his denials, conditioned security aid to a war-torn ally on its cooperation against his domestic rivals, the issue at the heart of his impeachment trial. At first glance, John R. Bolton's account on President Trump's private remarks sounded like an echo of the so-called smoking gun tape that proved President Richard M. Nixon really had orchestrated the Watergate cover-up and ultimately forced him from office. By the end of Monday, the revelation appeared to make it more likely that the Senate would agree to hear witnesses at the trial. But this is Mr. Trump's era and Mr. Trump's Washington, and the old rules do not always apply anymore. The reality show star, who was elected president even after he was captured on an Access Hollywood tape boasting about sexual assault, has gone on to survive one politically charged furor after another during his 3 years in the White House, proving more durable than any other national politician in modern American history. So will this be a Watergate-style turning point, or just one more disclosure that his critics consider validation without changing other minds? Will it be another smoking gun or another Access Hollywood? This story continues on page A18. Hopes dim in GOP for quick acquittal. That's the other story under the headline. And this story is by Michael D. Scheer and Nicholas Fandos. The White House and Senate Republican leaders struggled on Monday to salvage their plans for a quick acquittal of President Trump after a new account by his former National Security Advisor John R. Bolton corroborated a central piece of the impeachment case against him. The newly disclosed revelations by Mr. Bolton was forthcoming books was forthcoming book details how Mr. Trump conditioned military aid for Ukraine on the country's willingness to furnish information on his political rivals, angered key Republicans and reinvigorated a bid to call witnesses. Such a move would prolong the trial and pose new dangers for the president. A handful of Republicans appeared to be moving closer to joining Democrats in a vote to subpoena Mr. Bolton, even as their leaders insisted that doing so only delay his inevitable acquittal. And I quote, "I think it's increasingly likely that other Republicans will join those of us who think we should hear from John Bolton," Senator Mitt Romney, Republican of Utah, told reporters. He later told Republican colleagues at a closed-door lunch that calling witnesses would be a wise choice politically and substantively, according to people familiar with the discussions. As they opened the second day of their defense, Mr. Trump's lawyers largely ignored the revelations by Mr. Bolton, reported on Sunday by the New York Times, that bolstered the abuse of power case made by the House Democratic prosecutors. That story continues on page A16. In other headlines, Auschwitz survivors warn against silence in face of new perils. And there's a photo of a large group of people walking somewhere. It says, the subtext says, survivors of Auschwitz walked by the death camp's notorious gate ahead of Monday's ceremony. And the story is written by Joanna Berend. They wore scarves emblazoned with their prisoner numbers, the same ones tattooed on their arms. Many were frail, walking only with the support of friends or relatives. That's reflected in the photo. And as they slowly made their way one by one to what had been the Wall of Death, where thousands of prisoners were lined up for summary execution, it was a vivid reminder that before long, the last eyewitnesses to the crimes that took place in Auschwitz will be gone. What can I say? Open quote. All I have are these tears to pour over the past. Bathsheba Dagan, 95, told the crowd that gathered Monday for a solemn ceremony marking the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi concentration and death camp. Another quote, "I feel uplifted when I see so many of you here who will carry the memory of innocent people from all nations of the world who met their death here," she said, her voice often cracking with emotion. "You will make sure that those horrors are never repeated. I'm sorry. I apologize for the emotions." The ceremony at Auschwitz culminated a week of events around the world, including a commemoration in Jerusalem attended by dozens of world leaders who urged collective vigilance against a resurgence of anti-Semitism worldwide. 15 years ago, some 1,500 survivors attended the anniversary event. This year, there were about 200, and for many, it is likely to be their last visit. As those who can testify to the monstrous crimes of the Holocaust dwindle in number, there is growing concern about the efforts by political leaders to bend the historical narrative of World War II to suit their own ends. In the weeks leading up to the anniversary, President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia had repeatedly whitewashed the Soviet treaty with Nazi Germany before World War II and the subsequent subjugation of Poland by both countries at the outbreak of the war. That story continues on page A10. In other headlines, amid fog, pilot carrying Bryant had a fateful decision to make. This article is by Dave Phillips, Tim Arango, and Louis Keane. The helicopter carrying the basketball legend Kobe Bryant on Sunday morning circled over a golf course at Griffith Park in Los Angeles, awaiting clearance from air traffic controllers to continue its flight into the hills. The weather 55 miles south in Orange County, where the helicopter had departed less than an hour earlier, had been fine. 4 miles visibility. Mr. Bryant had routinely made the same flight from his home on the coast to the Camarillo Airport, near his basketball academy north of Los Angeles. But now, up ahead, a fog so thick that it nearly blinded drivers on the freeway enveloped the hillsides near their destination. Visibility was so poor that the Los Angeles Police Department had grounded its fleet of helicopters. The pilot had a decision to make, one that might have proved fatal. Turn around, begin flying on instruments, and head to a safe airport. The pilot, who by all accounts had a sterling safety record and was licensed to fly in inclement weather, kept going. Sometime after its last contact with air traffic controllers at 9:45 a.m., the aircraft slammed into a hillside at 1,085 feet. On Monday, investigators were trying to figure out what went wrong, and they emphasized that no possibility, including a mechanical problem, had been ruled out. And here's a quote: "We take a broad look at everything around an investigation around an accident." Jennifer Homendy, a member of the National Transportation Safety Board, said at a news conference on Monday afternoon, "We look at man, machine, and the environment, and weather is just a small portion of that." That story continues on page A14. That last quote was interesting, wasn't it? We look at man, machine, and the environment, and weather is just a small portion of that. In other headlines, in national headlines, 8 killed in Marina fire. And for the story that I just read about Kobe Bryant, I would just like to note that there were 8 other persons on the flight with him. And I think it's important that we don't forget them, because they weren't famous or popular or well-known or celebrity, They were important too. So I just wanted to say that. 8 killed in Marina fire. The fire tore through a wooden dock on the Tennessee River in Scottsboro, destroying dozens of boats and sending survivors into the water. Wealth test for green cards. The Supreme Court lifted a block on plans to deny green cards to people who may need public benefits. In international news headlines, Mideast peace plan coming. President Trump met with Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's leader, and said his plan would be unveiled on Tuesday. Next headline: the powerful fight power. A company wants to build a geothermal plant in Umbria. Elite residents don't want it. Italy Dispatch. In sports Tuesday, Nadal advances past Kai Kyrgios. A duel between an old-school veteran and a flickering young talent led to a dazzling display of tennis. In business headlines, the GOP and the left behind. Dayton, Ohio used to vote Democratic. As its economy soared, blue-collar workers turned to Republicans, a pattern that's repeating nationwide. GM's Detroit plant promise, a factory whose survival was a key issue in last year's strike will get $2.2 billion for next generation vehicles. And in New York, Zero Corporation, the headline. Prince Andrew said he would help the American authorities investigating Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking, but so far he has ignored their repeated requests. Considering the danger, New Jersey will become the first state to require builders to take climate change, including rising sea levels, into account to win government approval for new projects. And the last story in Science Times, the eruption. The headline is the brutality of Vesuvius. The eruption in 79 AD left particularly grim scenes of Herculaneum for archaeologists to study. And that ends our coverage of the news, or what's in the headlines today. And of course, we're using the New York Times. Our next, we'll now look at migration trends. What's happening in migration? So let's go over to Gallup to see what are the trends that we need to look out for now, right? Yeah. It's extremely challenging sometimes to go through the news because so much is happening, and I feel like it's moving so fast that sometimes I don't know if I can keep up. You know what I mean? It's a lot that's happening. It's a lot that's happening. So let's look at migration trends. I was going to use Gallup, but instead I'm going to go to the IOM press room and see what's on the headlines there. So here's a story that was shared this morning. More deaths recorded in the Americas in 2019 than in previous years. That's IOM Germany, Switzerland. Let's just read the other headlines before I go to that story. Mediterranean migrant arrivals reached 4,432 in 2020. In 2020. Mediterranean migrant arrivals reached 4,432 in 2020. Deaths reached 68. Focus on Greece. We're just at the 28th day in 2020. IOM responds to humanitarian needs of migrant caravan in Guatemala. Over 1 million Ethiopians received humanitarian aid from IOM in 2019. As Ukraine's veterans return home, IOM survey finds bias and unfair treatment. New cooperation agreement among East Horn of Africa states address overseas worker exploitation. And finally, weekend attack an effort to intimidate humanitarian actors. And I'm just going to go through the first story. I always share what's in the migration trends, because if you have traveled, if you plan to travel, if your family travels, then it's important for you to know what is happening in migration, because migration is not always voluntary. In a lot of times it is involuntary, or as a result of sometimes accidents, sometimes criminal activity. Things happen. So it's important for us to understand what is happening, and it's important for us to really think about how we treat people who migrate from their country of birth, because it can't be easy, and sometimes it's not their choice, because you have trafficking and so on and so forth. So there's so many things that happen. And even sometimes you also have refugee, and even sometimes when they choose to migrate, I cannot foresee someone just saying, I just want to leave a happy home. I don't think people leave happy homes. So it's important to be mindful to people who feel they need to migrate, or people who result in migrating for whatever reason. So from Berlin, at least 810 people died crossing deserts, rivers, and remote terrain on different migration routes across the Americas in 2019, making the year one of the deadliest on record, according to data from the Missing Migrants Project collected at IOM's Data Analysis Center in Berlin. And IOM, of course, is the International Organization for Migration. The records compiled from official government data as well as NGO and media reports indicate that this is the highest number of deaths documented in this region since IOM began keeping records 6 years ago. More than 3,800 deaths have been recorded in the Americas since 2014. And here's a quote: "These numbers are a sad reminder that the lack of options for safe and legal mobility pushes people onto more invisible and riskier paths, putting them at greater danger," said Frank Laczko, director of IOM's Data Analysis Center. The loss of lives should never be normalized nor tolerated as an assumed risk of irregular migration. The United States-Mexico border region is one of the most visible sites of migrant deaths in the Americas. MMP has recorded a growing number of deaths on this border every year since 2014, documenting a total of 2,403 over 6 years, including 497 in 2019. Most deaths were recorded in the waters of the Rio Grande, which runs between Texas and the Mexican states of Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, and Coahuila, where 109 people lost their lives in 2019, a 26% increase from the 86 deaths recorded in 2018. Many people also attempt the crossing through the remote, rugged terrain of the vast Arizona desert. At least 171 people lost their lives in this part of the border in 2019, a 29% increase over the 133 deaths documented in this area in 2018. And I'd like to share with you a clip from the New York Times looking at Missing Migrants Project's data are compiled by IOM staff based at its Global Migration Data Analysis Center, but came from a variety of sources, some of which are unofficial. Okay. I have a clip I'd like to share with you that speaks to President Trump's orders to reduce Mexicans crossing over into the U.S. illegally, and it is said to be working. I guess it's interesting because based on what I just read, it sounds like more people are dying. I don't know if that's what it's meant by it working, but let's hear what it has to say. You're listening to Yumi Radio, and I'm DJ Kelly. Thank you so much for tuning in. After this clip, we'll go back to look at consumer trends, some statistics and business.
Tienen niños con sed que necesitan agua.
Dozens of National Guard police. I'm on the Guatemala-Mexico border. This bridge is the main crossing for migrant caravans on their way to the United States. But this group, which left Honduras in mid-January, is about to hit a barrier, and they're still over 1,000 miles from the U.S. border.
Si ellos ya se entregan, no les dejan pasar, vamos a tener que hacer la diferencia.
Mexico shouldn't allow millions of people to try and enter our country.
Last year, President Trump threatened Mexico with import tariffs if the country didn't seal its border with Guatemala. So Mexico deployed a newly formed security force to block migrants from entering. Now this wave of some 4,000 migrants is putting enforcement here to the test. I wanted to see how Mexico would handle the challenge. What I find is a country taking a much harder line on its southern border in response to U.S. pressure. I witnessed 3 attempts by migrants to cross into Mexico, each time met with increasing force. This attempt ends with Mexican authorities letting small groups through to register with migration. It's a legal obligation, and also a way of breaking up the caravan. Once in Mexico, the first thing migrants hear is a warning from the U.S., repeated over a loudspeaker.
No se deje engañar. No es un hecho que Estados Unidos le otorgará asilo. Al contrario, lo podría regresar de inmediato a Guatemala.
And then an offer to send them home.
México le ofrece oportunidad de empleo en su país de origen.
En México da la opción de regresar y trabajar en nuestra tierra, en Honduras, pero eso es imposible.
By the end of the day, close to 2,000 migrants have registered to stay in Mexico, many with the goal of someday still reaching the U.S. What they don't know is that Mexico will end up returning most of them to Honduras. It's a new day, and more migrants are on the border, undeterred and ready to cross into Mexico.
Venimos a pedirle al señor presidente de la República de México.
This time, a few petition Mexican authorities on behalf of the group, appealing for compassion to let them continue the caravan.
Con el permiso de movilizarnos libremente por tierras mexicanas.
But Mexico doesn't budge. So the group turns to Plan B. Border security are waiting for them on the other side of the Suchiate River.
Ellos me lesionaron y iba cruzando allá, me golpearon, uno de ellos me golpeó así.
The standoff ends with the migrants staying put in Guatemala and waiting for an opportunity to try to cross again. A few days later, with border security nowhere in sight, hundreds of migrants managed to get through by crossing the river at a different spot. Only to be met by dozens of troops who were waiting for them several miles down the road. Some 800 people are rounded up and forced onto buses, soon to be deported. In the face of pressure from all sides, Mexico stopped this group from reaching the U.S. border, giving the Trump administration exactly what it wants.
You're listening to Yumi Radio. This is the Yumi Radio Morning Show, and you were just listening to a clip by the New York Times on migration from Mexico to the U.S. via the Mexico-U.S. border. Let's continue now with the trends. We're on to business, and this information is coming from HubSpot. Their marketing statistics based on research completed, and of course, HubSpot is a CRM system, consumer relationship management, so they handle a lot of data because it's a system that you can use for communicating with your clients, so they would see the data. They have quick, easy access to the data. So What are your company's top marketing challenges? And here is what it found: the state of inbound. So generating traffic and leads, 63%. Proving the ROI of our marketing activities, 40%. Securing enough budget, 28%. Identifying the right technologies for our needs, 26%. Managing our website is also 26%. Targeting content for an international audience, 21%. Training our team, 19%. Hiring top talent, 16%. Finding an executive sponsor, 7%. So those are the company's top marketing challenges data. And other data, what content distribution channels do you plan to add to your marketing in the next year? State of inbound again, this is what people say. 48% YouTube, 39% Facebook video, 33% Instagram, 20% messaging apps, 15% podcasts, 13% Snapchat, 8% Medium, 5% Slack, 22% none of the above. So social media statistics, with about 3 billion people on social media globally, understanding how to market on various social platforms has become an integral part of every business's success. These social media marketing statistics will help you learn how marketers today are successfully expanding their reach, boosting brand awareness, and promoting their products and services through these platforms, so you can do the same. So for Facebook, globally there are over 2.38 billion monthly active users on Facebook, and that's Facebook 2019. Of the 2.1 billion total Facebook accounts, 270 million profiles are fake. Hold on. Of the 2.1 billion total Facebook accounts, 270 million profiles are fake. According to Facebook, the platform reaches over 60% of internet users. There are over 80 million small businesses globally that use Facebook pages. Facebook is used by about 50% of American teens, but it no longer dominates the teen social media landscape as it once did. That's Pew Research Center. India has the most Facebook users out of any other country in the world. 74% of people say they use Facebook for professional purposes. Facebook is the second most used platform globally, followed by YouTube. Around 43% of US adults get news from Facebook. 1.56 billion active users log onto Facebook every day. Instagram. 71% of Instagram users are under the age of 35 years old. More than 500 million people use Instagram every day. 7 out of 10 hashtags on Instagram are branded. Instagram hit $14 million in revenue in 2019. Instagram has over 1 billion active monthly users. Instagram advertising has the possible reach of over 849 million users. In 2020, 75.3% of US businesses will use Instagram. There are over 400 million Instagram users creating Instagram stories every day. Research on 89 companies found that marketers posted 1,347 Instagram stories compared to 614 Snapchat stories in July 2018. Instagram stories posted a 220% increase in year-on-year ad spend. Brands on Instagram create an average of 2.5 stories on the platform every week. The average Instagram user spends 53 minutes on the app per day. Instagram launched IGTV app in 2018, which allows creators to upload 1 hour long videos. And in LinkedIn, CEOs on LinkedIn have an average of 930 connections. When it comes to delivering content and securing audience engagement, LinkedIn is the most effective social media platform. The average LinkedIn user spends 17 minutes on the site per month. LinkedIn has over 500 million users. 39% of the 500 million LinkedIn users are paying for a premium account. LinkedIn has 562 million members. 40% of members visit the professional social network each day. Pinterest. There are 250 million active users on Pinterest. 50% of new Pinterest sign-ups in 2018 were men. 80% of people use Pinterest on mobile. 80% of millennial Pinterest users say that the platform helps them decide what they should buy. 80% of millennial Pinterest users say that the platform helps them decide what they should buy. I had to read that again. 85% of women users use Pinterest to plan life moments. That's interesting. The year-on-year growth of international Pinterest users is 3 times higher than the year-on-year growth of US users. Snapchat. Snapchat has 190 million daily active users. The average revenue per Snapchat user increased by 39% to $1.68 in 2019 from $1.21 in 2018. Snapchat reached 90% of all 13 to 24 year olds and 75% of all 13 to 34 years old in the US. In 2017, 81% of Snapchat's Q2 revenue came from North America. In May 2018, Snapchat's shares were worth $10.95, down from their original value of $27.09. In the US, Snapchat is the 6th most popular networking app as of May 2018. As of May 2018, the longest Snapchat streak is 1,120 snaps. Snapchat users spent an average of 34.5 minutes on the app in September 2018. The cost of Snap Ads campaigns starts at $3,000 per month. On average, Snapchat users under the age of 25 visit Snapchat over 20 times every day and spend over 30 minutes on the app every day. 500 million people use Instagram every day. 71% of Instagram users are under the age of 35. Instagram has over 1 billion monthly active users. And tomorrow we'll share some more information with you. That's the end of our news roundup for today. Thank you so much for joining us on Yumi Radio. This is the Yumi Radio Morning Show with me, DJ Kelly. It is such a pleasure for us to share these information with you so you can take it, and especially if you're an entrepreneur or a business person or you want to become one, this information is very useful to help you understand how to position yourself for the market. And if you are already a business owner operating a business, this helps you understand how to reposition your business, because it's continuous change and continuous growth and continued strategic movements in order to grow and build your business. So thank you so much for joining us right here on Yumi Radio.